Good afternoon, my name is Shawn Aceto. This is Your Essential Nature. Joining me today is my co-host Kimberly Testa. And part of what we want to do here today is invite you to join us in a fresh new perspective on spirituality, philosophy, metaphysics, and the things of that like. How are you, Kim?
I'm great. I'm really relaxed. I had a nice massage, so
Good. Good.
Ready for whatever we want to dive into today.
Good. So I guess we should start with somewhat of a background. For me, my jump-off point was probably martial arts. It's probably when I started to look at things a little bit differently, and then ended up here where I am now as an intuitive healer, or a stand-up philosopher, I'd like to say. How about you?
Oh man, it started in childhood, actually.
In utero?
Maybe not in utero. I wasn't a child then. But there was always an awareness that things weren't what people were telling me they were, and I always could see through the crap, the lies, and I just knew that things were different. And I actually grew up in an environment where we had a lot of books. So I was reading things like Zen and the Art of Archery and other sort of new age or metaphysical or spiritual books at a really, really young age. And I started to experiment with lucid dreaming in elementary school, and even got other children to join me in my dreams. So it started that way.
And I'm sure you got in trouble for that.
No, I didn't get in trouble for other things. But it started that way, and then eventually, for me, it just got shut down because of just life and trauma and all that other stuff. But the awareness was always there, and I had several peak experiences throughout my teenage years. Even though I was essentially depressed, starting around the age of 12, I had a couple peak experiences where I would wake up and I would be in love with everything and everyone and feel awesome, and I didn't know why. And then the next day it would be gone. But it was always there with me. So I always knew that there was this potential to be that way. Although it wasn't anything that I could make happen again.
So with any of those books you mentioned, was there ever anything you picked up and you started reading and you said, holy crap, I could have written this, because it took everything you thought and understood and put it in a framework where you couldn't have at that point in your life, but you understood it intrinsically?
I think all of them I really understood. Oh, the Carlos Castaneda books, I read those at a really young age too, and it was all very, very familiar to me. But I will say there was one book, Wayne Dyer, Your Erroneous Zones. It was like, I don't know if he wrote that in the late 70s.
That was his first book.
I read that book, and actually it made so much sense to me that, now I'm remembering this, that triggered my first peak experience when I was 16 years old.
For me, it was the Tao Te Ching. It was still the way I view things now, is taking all of it, and it just is. Not trying to fight over the name and the label and the placement and the practice and the ritual, saying it just is.
Yeah.
The water flows and we're all connected, we're all a part of it, and it touches everything, not just here, but down here also. So for me, that woke me up into a whole world of awareness, that everything was connected, everything moved together. And I find now in my practice, I'm very much the same in that, where I don't want to tie into any one mantra, any philosophy, any modality, and kind of it now being in the spiritual community, fighting against the tide like you. Today everyone's talking about Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
So Mercury is 48 million miles away. So people are willing to allow something 48 million miles away to affect their day completely bypassing and discounting their own consciousness, their own awareness, their own intellect, their own intuitive guidance, because they want to maybe have a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. People do like a good excuse to not be in control.
Yep. And I think what that represents is letting go of the stuff you don't need anymore. The problem we find in this community, this holistic community, is everyone thinks that, well, I'm doing this work, so I don't have any stuff. But Mercury retrograde really irritates me because I really have stuff that I don't want to look at.
Right. Well, it's about being authentic and radically honest with ourselves, too. And not fooling
I like
ourselves
that.
that we don't have stuff.
Radically honest.
Radically
I like
honest. And it's scary for most people. We avoid it. We don't really want to see ourselves. I mean, some of us do. Some of us have the courage to do it, but it's not easy.
Have you ever taken a client and had them say out loud a behavior that they want to get rid of? They'll be vague about it and say, I don't like when I do this. And when you ask them to put it in terms and be radically honest, I love that term, and put it out there, and they hear the words coming out of their mouth, what a shift that creates. Because then it's open, it's exposed, it can oxidize, and then it can go by the wayside.
Right. That's something that does happen with clients. Often they'll say, I've never said this before, I've never told anyone this before.
Just
so
that
we're
alone.
Able to offer them a safe place to do it. Yeah. And that will shift.
And I think part of the work that we're doing is encouraging people to be that honest, to not need to go outside of themselves, per se, outside of, to go to a therapist or get walked around in circles like that, but to be accountable for what they're doing. In all my years, I had one therapist that actually would hold my feet to the fire. And I loved it because the other ones, even though I didn't have any problems, the other ones wouldn't do that. They'd say, okay, we're going to talk about this, and then they'd go back next week and they'd talk about something different. And I said, well, I have my pad. I want to be accountable for this. No, we're just going to go somewhere else. And a friend of mine the other day I ran into said that the only thing that people get offended by is the truth. And this therapist said her example was, what would you say if I called you a bank robber? And before I could even get the sentence, I said, I knew. Why would I get upset? I'm not a bank robber.
Exactly.
So you confront with the truth, and then everything changes.
Yeah. The truth changes as well, though, but that's another subject.
Oh, why don't you tell me more about that?
But it does. We are all creators, and we're all co-creators.
Oh, God, here comes the law of attraction stuff.
But it isn't.
Don't go there.
I'm not
Don't
going
go
there.
Okay.
But the truth does change. And I've seen it in my own life. It's about perspective.
So
Everything comes back to perspective.
Let me backtrack so I don't get too much flack for this from our studio audience. When people say the law of attraction, it has become such a cliche that the intent behind all of that teaching is lost. People just throw that around like they're at an Amway meeting and they just talk in cliches now, and they completely bypass the authenticity of that.
The younger viewers aren't going to know what Amway is.
No, there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah. In the beginning, when I consciously started off on this healing journey for myself, I was introduced to the law of attraction, and I read one of the first books that I read was Ask and It Is Given.
Yeah.
And for me, and I still recommend that book for people, because it was really about me taking responsibility for what was going on in my life, and it helped me to see the patterns in my thinking and to help me change them. But that's about as far as I sort of went in the law of attraction.
Because you got it intrinsically.
Yeah.
And it made sense to you. So you touched on something else that I think we really want to address, and that's being authentic. I think being authentic far supersedes anything else.
Absolutely.
Bypasses your black belt in Reiki, all your degrees, all your classes. Being your authentic self and walking the walk is far more powerful than any certificate you can put on the wall.
But people don't know their authentic selves, and that's the challenge.
Right. So we start this journey in a quest for self-healing, and it starts to feel a little good, and we go out and we want to share that with the world, and we forget all our stuff, but we still have it with us.
Absolutely. And and that, we think the same way a lot. So we see a lot of people who are, quote, unhealed. I mean, we all have stuff, but they begin to act like they're not. So they're not being authentic. They're acting like they are some spiritual. I actually met someone who called herself a guru, and I was shocked.
That's what Laura calls spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
And you see it in yoga also. I'm doing this, it feels good, and I'm not thinking about my stuff. So for the time being, I can pretend that I'm not having any stuff. Uh-huh. And I'll give you the best advice. And as we've talked about many times, in this practice, as being a healer, sometimes the hardest thing you have to do is take your own advice.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're in that situation, you've got a client and they're breaking down and there are tears and you're talking, you're walking through them, and then you say, oh, God, I got to take that advice too. That's for me, not even for them.
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. And, we do attract clients that are, are going to help us, that mirror us in a lot of ways. So,
Always.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the healing work that we do with others is for us as well. Because we need to do it. Otherwise, we really aren't in the position to be able to help others.
And that's the difference, I think, with the authenticity is the willingness to say, crap, this is for me too.
Yeah.
And I am not perfect. I am not done with all my stuff. Every day is a journey. Every day is, I don't want to say fight, but for lack of a better word, it's a fight and a challenge to better yourself.
For me, I look at it more as a discovery process. And, it can be really challenging, but it gets easier in a lot of ways. And there may be something that I come up against. I'm like, oh, but I'm happy because I can see it.
Because you're getting rid of stuff.
We all walk around we all have blinders. We all have blind spots. We can't see it. And it can be quite confronting and shocking when that happens, but it's a good thing. I don't avoid it anymore. I go into it, and that's what we need to do. We need to really just be with it.
So we were talking on the way up today about Mercury retrograde, and it's all over Facebook. It's Mercury retrograde, all my stuff. It's like a psychic and emotional diarrhea. And if you think about what diarrhea is, okay?
Okay.
It only gets in the way when you're trying to do other stuff, when you're not allowing the body to do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
When you're trying to say, oh, no, I need to go shopping. No, you got to take care of this stuff now. So if you look at it as an opportunity to cleanse yourself, to purge, to emotionally release all these things that aren't serving you, how is it a bad thing? It's only a bad thing if you're trying to play tennis.
Well, it's the resistance.
You know what I was thinking? I forget, that wasn't me.
Well, the resistance is it's the hardest part for people to let go, because we hold on to so many things. In my journey, one of the biggest things that I discovered was this softening that happened. And I realized how much I had been holding on to and how I learned how to define myself as a young person down to the way that I wrote, my handwriting, and I would never wear pink, And over the years, through my journey, I changed my handwriting and I started to incorporate different colors into my wardrobe and allowed different music. And it was just like this relaxation and not clutching on to what I thought was my identity, my self-identity, which isn't at all who I am. Because I did find out who I was one night, spontaneously.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, the only way that I can really, it's hard to explain in words, and the only way that I can say.
Okay, so the reason I want to discuss this.
I discovered the magnificence of my being.
Okay.
And I saw myself, I knew myself as this energy and as a creator. that's the easiest way for me to explain it. But it was more energetic. It was very experiential, and it was about knowing myself as this energy and the connection between myself and everything. And after that happened, I was able to visually see the grids between us, the lights that connect all of us.
And if I was ultra spiritual, I would tell you exactly what that was and all about that.
Exactly. But for me, and I know a lot of people try to intellectualize this, it's not about that. It's about experiencing it.
No, because if you're trying to name it, if you're trying to classify and quantify it, you're taking it away from the experience.
Yeah, it's not about that at all.
So the reason I wanted you to share that is I think that many of our audience has these moments, but you're brought up in an environment that doesn't foster these things. So you spend 20, 30, 50 years in your case thinking that you're the only one that's experienced this, right? It's like ghost stories. It's like the paranormal shows. Everyone has a ghost story. Why are you watching TV to experience someone else's when you know you had your own? Are you looking for validation? Did it really happen? Of course it did.
Well, that's huge, and that's one of the biggest things that comes up with clients is to validate them, because a lot of people come in and they think they're crazy or they don't trust themselves. And so to be able to have had these experiences and say, oh, no, that happens and you're not the only one.
Yeah, who taught you to doubt? If there's one thing I think I could get rid of through my practice, through this show, through the work we do, is to eradicate doubt, to remove that, to remove the buts, to remove the can'ts, to remove all those blocks that aren't even ours. Because if you take a 2-year-old, there's nothing they can't do. You can't tell them that you can't do that. They're ready to try it. So they learn from us as parents. They learn from people around us that you're not supposed to try. You're supposed to say it's safe, because if you fail, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So part of what I want to share with our audience, with our studio audience, is not to doubt.
Yeah.
What good does that serve you? No one has achieved a degree of success in this world in anything by doubting who they are.
Right.
They achieve it through their belief, through their desire, and their faith and trust in their experience.
Yeah, and trust, that's the word that I use. Instead of talking about the doubt, I talk about trust. And, and that is one of the biggest themes with people is for them to learn to trust themselves and to trust their own intuition and the guidance that comes through. Because, we are taught to doubt. And trusting is a big challenge for people. They don't know how to do it. And I always say, the only way to trust is to trust. You just have to do it over and over and over again. And to learn to differentiate between your inner voice, your intuition, and the little voice of someone else, of your programming or whatever it is that's in the back of your head going, no, you can't do it, and to trust.
That came up today. Okay, it comes up every day, but having a conversation with someone, and I always tell people, I start a lot of my speeches and lectures with the idea that I don't want you to believe what I have to say. Right. I want you to find the truth in it. I'm not interested in right or wrong. I'm interested in the truth. And the truth you will find on your own. I'm not going to tell you if you're right or wrong. And that's something that I want to teach everybody. Go and find the truth in what I'm saying. If it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate.
Exactly.
Who am I to dictate what truth is to you?
Right. That's it. I know. It just brings up the whole guru thing, too.
Not that I don't like telling people what to do, but I don't want to do it in that capacity.
Right.
Yeah, and when you take that guru, that label, I'm a master, I'm this, you're flashing a badge, and you're putting the focus on here rather than on your heart, rather than on your authentic self.
Yeah.
And the offering.
But, also with the whole guru thing is people want to give up their power. And so they want to give, and it's the same thing with religion. They want to put all their faith and all their trust into something that they think is outside of them.
Yes,
and even with people who are into the angels, it's the same thing. Oh, the angels will get me this, the angels get... Yeah. And I did that for a little while. And now I'm like, I had to go to the doctor's yesterday. It's like, I need a parking spot. I was going to be there right on time. I said, I want a parking spot right in front. I didn't call on my angels. I called on myself, and I said, I'm going to get that parking spot. I'm going to have 2 spaces. I'm going to pull right in front of the doctor's office. And that's exactly what happened. I was like, yeah.
Right.
You know, but it was me. It's my energy. It's my intention. It doesn't have to be someone outside of us. We all have this. We're all connected anyway, you know?
And that's part of the message. You don't need to go all the way out there
to come back to
here.
something.
You don't need to externalize.
But, you know, and I went through all of this and my own journey. And when I first started to delve into it, I went to someone who was like, you need this crystal for this and to protect you, and you need this archangel to protect you for that. And I fell.
And you have a rubber chicken.
And I fell for it for a while until I had my own experiences and I really began to trust myself. And then I let it all go. I didn't have a chicken then, though.
No, but if your intention is that chicken is going to heal you, guess what?
It will.
Whose fault is it? Yours or the chicken? It's yours.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a chicken.
And, you know, and that's the other thing as well with clients is they're thanking me for doing, I'm like, I'm not healing you. You're healing you. I'm just offering the space. I'm opening up the energy for you to do it. It really has nothing to do with me.
That's probably my gripe of the week. My gripe of the week is the component that says, I want change, but I don't want to change.
Yeah.
I want to heal, but I don't want to do the work. I want the beach body, but I want to eat garbage all day.
Right.
So how do we get past that? And that's what, I guess if I left homework with anyone, it would be how do you challenge yourself to be accountable, to make those changes you want, because you're responsible. You can go on a diet, you can go to a gym, you can do anything else, but if you're not doing the work, if your intention isn't really to do that, it's not going to work.
Well, we're all different, but you know, I find for a lot of people, and for myself too, you know, we make ourselves get to a point where we can't take it anymore, and then we're so frustrated with our lives that we have to change, and we make up our minds to change. You know, people will have their low points. Some other people are just go-getters and will do whatever they have to do. But for most of us, we need to get to the point where we feel like there's nothing left.
Yes.
And then we
and
stand
if we don't
up
get there,
and
we're
we
put there.
commit ourselves one way or another. We're committed.
So, in conclusion, we're committed to being here, to open up this dialogue, to ask questions, not to give answers, but to find the truth in things. If you have a question, if you have a subject, if you have something you think that we should touch on, please feel free to email us. Join us in the studio audience. And the email address is youressentialnature@gmail.com. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, studio audience. We'll see you soon.